When we left off, you were talking about reading the scripts and really genuinely laughing. What was it that you laughed at? What to you made those moments?
Man. Well, first of all, it's hard to remember early on, but as time, I mean, just the situations were generally so recognizable. But as time went on, the characters, you just loved imagining these words coming out of these, being used with these voices or coming out of these actors because you knew exactly how they were going to sound. You just knew the character so well pretty early on. And the writing was so specific and great to each of them that there was always so many payoffs. I couldn't even, sometimes I'd read a script, I'm like, I can't believe I belly laughed like 4 times on this page, because I loved what he said, I loved what she said, and then, Marie comes in, and then Frank, So it's basically from the character, and then many times with the story. There were times that I would read scripts, and I'd be, like the first half, I'd be saying, oh, I don't know, this doesn't feel like a rain. It seems like, is this slow or is this like what? Totally, it was for a reason. It was building to this amazing switch or a thing or what, and it never felt slow. Of course, in performance, but that's why I could never be a writer. Is the form, writing the sitcom form when it's done well, and as I learned from Phil, like listening to the things that he says in his structure wise and what you need in that 22 minutes. It's all thought out. It's not left to chance. It's not, oh, well, hopefully she'll make a funny face and this will be fine. No. It's like the psychology is there. The situation is believable, and every line comes purely out of the character and how that character would react in that situation. So that's why, I guess.
Were there things that you would read that you hated?
I couldn't say I hated. I always had a little trouble with the sexy. Like if it got too, because I love watching the show with my kids, and I love, so there were some, like they've never seen angry sex, which I know Ray loves that one. But there are certain episodes, I wouldn't say I hated it, but it just definitely was like, oh, this isn't my type of show.
Let's talk a little bit about the character of Amy. Can you describe her for us?
I love the character of Amy. I am very much like myself, so that's a narcissistic answer. How would I describe her? Well, I just think of her in situations of just really kind of being such an optimist and, but not dumb. I mean, she's not a rocket scientist, but as far as being keyed into the emotional life of everyone who's in the room, and just wanting everything to work out and seeing the best in everything. I think that's hilarious against the major players in the show who are so neggy, neurotic, and crazy and argumentative, and it's been so fun, like in rep theater or something, where you get to play it over this period of time, where you start out with these little personality traits, which are sweet and friendly and emotional and loving. But over time, and in all these situations, these things get blown up and twisted, and then seeing with the parents. And it just was very fun to do that in a play, because it feels like doing a play with great writing, because you can really just like live it, kind of. You just are kind of living the scene. It's not, so Amy is, the sister-in-law, the girl who's not really part of the group, but loves being in the group, So that's Amy.
How has she changed since the beginning?
A little more outspoken, a little more, just the situation. We saw the other day, my daughter loves watching the reruns, and there's this one episode where Robert messes up the thank you notes. And I think it might have been one of the first ones where you really see Amy lose her shit. And it's over the, these thank you notes, and then being manipulated, and then having to come to terms with the fact that eventually we're all just going to get along. We're just trying to get through, and let's just kind of forget it. That was great because you got to go through so many. She got to go through so many different things. So in that aspect, it's not the writers have used her more in different situations. So that's how the character has changed. And they know me pretty well too. So I think they kind of get an idea of like, you know, they can imagine, like they do with all of them. They can imagine what Patty is gonna do. They can imagine what Brad can do, you know.
Do you know where the name Amy comes from?
Yeah, I think it comes from Amy Janin, who's the secretary on the show. But ironically, Philip has a cousin named Amy McDougal. So even though it started out as Amy, because Amy didn't have a last name when I was first on, and even when they were starting to joke around about names, I said, oh, I wanted it to be Irish. I thought, you know, Irish Catholic girl. And so then they said McDougal, and he really does have a cousin named Amy McDougal.
Now you touched on it about how Amy was introduced onto the show, but can you elaborate?
Yeah. Our characters, Deborah and Amy, worked together when Deborah worked, and they were getting together at her house and talking about how, you know, Amy watching Deborah's life and thinking it's so great, you're so lucky you're married. And it's so funny because that was really from a real relationship. And me and my friend Siobhan Fallon, when I got engaged to Phil, and she was an actress in New York, she was always like, oh, you're so lucky. Your life is so normal now. Like it was so that I used that completely for the character. And that wasn't even something that the writers necessarily knew, but it had been in my life of when the one girlfriend gets married or their life changes in some dramatic way and it just feels like they've got it all together and I really don't know what I'm doing. So that was the beginning. And then Robert walks in and Amy like sees him and possibility and potential, and that's it. That's basically the first thing. And they do go out on a date, and then it ends up being he's hilarious in it because he gets all this confidence because now everybody's talking about how handsome he is or something. It's really, really funny. And so it really becomes about the sibling rivalry, which is what's so great. The thing starts out like, I feel like on another show, it would be all about introduce this character and ooh, this relationship. But it's not. That's just one thing that happened that was a catalyst to some deeper neuroses that can now be explored. And that's good. And that's when your character is used well, that's exciting because then you're real part of the story.
How was it being on that set for the first time as an actress?
Well, the first time going on, I didn't know what the feeling was. I mean, I was so excited. And I'd worked on shows that Phil had done before, so it wasn't 100% new to me. And I had no idea that it was going to continue on to anything else. And any other show, it didn't. And this was one episode. We were just hoping the show would get picked up. I mean, it was really, when you think back. So I remember walking onto the sound stage and seeing Patty Heaton, and we were kids. She was like, "Oh, hi!" We were talking and kibitzing and whatever. And okay, everybody, sit down. We're going to get started. And I start walking over. I'm like going, oh my gosh, I got to go see where I sit. And she was like, "What?" And I said, "Oh, well, I'm doing the show today. I'm Amy." And immediately I was like, "Oh my God, what if she's unhappy? What if they hate me? Whatever." And she like went, "Ah!" Like she screamed hysterically, and a big hug. So that was like the initial, oh, this is going to be fine. And then the reality is, once you sit down and you're reading the script, it could have been college. It could have been, Actors Initiative. Because once you're there and you're doing it, then you really you want to just serve the piece. You want to do well. I think if I'd been so thinking, oh my God, there's Doris Roberts, or oh God, Brad Garrett's so funny, or Peter Boyle. I mean, forget it. You could have gone out of your mind. But it wasn't. I just remember it just being like, oh, this is so fun to do a play again. And it went really well. And I knew what my character would do. It wasn't like, now I have to create, figure this out. It was all there in the writing and in the situation. So I just kind of had to show up and be relaxed and do it. And that's pretty much what happened. It was great.
Were the cast and crew aware that you were married to Phil?
After all these years, I honestly don't know. Oh, you know what I think I did? I think I was so I was so paranoid of someone thinking I didn't want them to know, neurotic. I think I crossed out my name on the card and I put Mrs. Rosenthal, to say, don't worry, you don't have to think because I kept the name Horan for my parents because I think they would have been, I know for a fact, they've said it, I don't have to think it. They want to see Monica Horan's name up there. It's very important to them. And then also then when you're at the courthouse and your name's Robert Horan, oh, are you? It's nice. They're very proud. So I kept my SAG name and I kept my name. But on the set, I didn't make bones about it. So that's right. That's what I did.
Talk about the relationship of Amy and Robert.
It's really, not a very healthy one. No, I think it's grown over time, but I think in the beginning, it was really like one of those relationships where, and this happens all the time, where someone is aware of all the problems and all the flaws and all the dynamics with the family, but somehow I can fix it and I can make that. So I think that was the relationship. And that I loved playing all the time too, and that he would be one. But I think there was always that undercurrent of, it's not working out. And of course they broke up, but they were back together and broke up, So, but it made it easy because the writing was so good. I didn't have to think about, where were they and what was going on with it. It was just funny that they would, in that stage of life, being with a man who couldn't commit. And I think it's a pretty typical situation.
At what point did you know that the characters would eventually marry?
The night that I read the script that they were engaged. I didn't know. And that's another one of the things about not reading the scripts beforehand. There was also, if they were thinking about the characters getting married, and I'm friends with all the writers and of course really friendly with Phil, and then if they would have said to me, we're thinking of these characters getting married, that would have been, I think I probably would have put it in one ear and out the other, because then you're thinking, well, what's happening? Are they getting married? And we live together. We have the kids, the house. We really did not talk about that once we were, when we were home. And it wasn't like this, again, this intentional thing. It just felt right because I didn't want to put pressure, and I have no drive as an actress since I had quit and fired my agent before. If it was one, if it was two, Diane knew it was all good. I was happy with what I had. So it was really made it even more special and poignant that night, and people were buzzing a little bit about the possibility, but I really, I didn't want to know. I didn't want to know or even think about it until I read the script. So when I read that script, I'm not kidding. This might sound like bullshit, but it's not. You got to trust me. It really was, it really was almost like as a fan. I read it, and when he said, the whole thing, she comes out, and the cars, and the stop, and what's going on, and he says, Amy, I love you, will you marry me? I burst into tears reading it. And it was half, I'm going to get to wear a wedding dress, and it was half, Robert and Amy, you're getting married. It was fun to have it be that genuine. It makes it more fun. Just like Phil doesn't want people to know what the end of the series is, or when they advertise, they do the publicity for the show, and he gets furious if they, divulge a plot point or have anything to do with the payoff of the show in the promo. That's like, ugh, thanks, you just ruined it. That's the way I felt in this, because if I knew about it, yeah, okay, then you know about it. It's nothing special. When you get there and then you get to do it, then it's exciting. So that's when I found out. It was just when everybody else did, although some of the crew knew before me.
Now, when did your role change from recurring to regular?
I think that was 2 years ago. I think it was the last 2 years of the show, and it must have been with the with getting married and the family. I mean, the most exciting thing for me, aside from being able to get the wedding dress and getting married, and even the being regular part, which worked out because the kids at that point were both in school. You know, it just timing couldn't have been better. It would have been stressful if it had happened before. It happened when I was able to really enjoy it and go to work all the time and be with these amazing people. And I mean, we're all very good friends. I mean, Patty Stand and Sarah Hale gave me this sweater. And so we have a lot of friends and we're very close. So, wait a minute, I lost my train of thought. What were we saying? I got all distracted with Sarah.
Oh, we were talking about when you became a regular character.
Yeah, it didn't change that much for me in my mind. I mean, it worked out well because my life logistically was set up for it. But before I still felt very involved because I was with either the episode was my life, like the PMS episode, or Phil, I would come and I could see, so the only thing that was a drastic change, which again, I think was after the characters got married, was that I got to do it every day. And then some of the situations, some of my scenes got more interesting because I got more to do. So that was really good. And the best part though, aside from getting to wear the dress, that's what I was going to say, aside from wearing the dress and being a bride and having the characters get married, is that I got to meet Georgia Engel, who has become one of my best friends, and to work with her and to become friends with her has been like one of the best gifts of the show.
How was she cast as your mother?
Phil just got it. First of all, she is the TV version of my mother. And they actually met. My mother went to see her do Nonsense in Scranton. And my family went, and they went backstage. And my brother said watching the two of them talk was just like surreal. I wish somebody would have videotaped it, because all that sweetness and, kindness, and they're very, very similar.
And Fred Willard was cast as Amy's father.
Yeah. I believe it was all, Lisa Miller Katz and Phil and who can we get and bringing in, and Fred also. We also went to see Georgia in Nonsense in New Orleans with Fred and Mary, Fred Willard, and Chris Elliott, who plays my brother. And we're going to actually see him next weekend in London. So it's been really nice that whole extended family from the show, even though we really didn't get to work together much. They're only in a handful of episodes. But there's been a real personal connection with those people. So that's very special. And it's really funny because they feel like they're my family. The Barones are in-laws.
How did the McDougalls and the Barones, get along?
On the show?
Yeah.
Or, you mean the actors in real life?
No, the show.
Oh, well, they don't. That's it's funny. It's like that, it's coming from two different worlds and having to bring them all together, but you're family, so you really do have to be together sometimes. So that's what people relate to. That's why people love that stuff, because that's what we all have to live. You pick your friends, you don't pick your family, and when they're your family, you better be able to laugh at stuff and let things roll off your back, because when you don't, then it's a really funny sitcom. And they are, at loggerheads, but that makes it funny.
Let's talk about some of the other cast members on the show, starting with Ray Romano.
Ray, I think Ray is so good, so talented. Ray, when the first episode that I did, I remember just thinking I couldn't believe his instincts and how he was so he was such a good actor. I didn't have any prejudice really, thinking, oh, he's a stand-up. I mean, stand-ups they spend more time on the stage than I do, so I figured he probably had, a lot of ability. But I loved the way he rehearsed, and I loved the way he focused in rehearsal, especially in the beginning there. That first episode, I remember being very impressed with the things that he cared about, the psychology of the show, and really listening to what the other actors were saying and how it fit in, and yeah, it was great working with him.
What about his character's relationship to Amy?
Yeah, that's very funny, because Ray, so much of his personality is, like blown up a million times to be Ray Barone. But we actually did an episode where I got totally paranoid that it was based on real life because, we're all friends. I'm really good friends with his wife Anna, and we've been on vacation together with the kids and stuff. And this last time we were on vacation, I almost got the feeling like, God, I think I talked too much for Ray. I think I'm a little too cheery because Ray likes to not be cheery. Ray likes to point out the problems in a situation. So at that point, the two of us together are really extreme because I'm always, like, camp counselor, let's go. I'm having a great time on the vacation. And I got the feeling that maybe it was a little too much. And so then I didn't say anything now. I'm like, ugh, I'm probably just being paranoid. Then this episode comes out called Sister-in-Law, which is about Amy bugs Ray because she's too cheery and she talks too much. And I was just so like, oh my God, because they do that a lot on the show. And so I took him aside. And it was really because he had divulged to me that he was being paranoid about somebody else. And I knew he was crazy. It's like, it's like junior high. Let's face it. It's junior high. And I said, okay, since you told me that, I have to tell you, I thought this episode was based on me. Like, am I too cheery? Do I bug you? And he was like, oh, no, he loved it. So it's, it is what it is. We're very different in many ways, but he's a great guy and we're friends.
What Doris Roberts?
Doris is, well, of course, with the theater background and all of that. And I love going into her basement and having cocktails with all her awards and things like that. She's got a great basement. All the pictures of her with like Jimmy Coco and all the people she'd done theater with. And so meeting Doris and getting to hang out with Doris has been like the theater side of the show, aside from how great she is. And she also very early on was made a point to take me aside. She looks out for me in certain ways, like, darling, your light, that kind of thing. Tell me how to get my light and stuff like that. And she would, like I said, very early on, she said, now listen, you're here because you're good and you're doing a good job. It's not because you're like, she made a point to say, don't think that I think that. And she told me that her acting friends thought I did a good job. That was nice. Support.
Was that an issue for you?
Yes, I was always paranoid. But I think I was always a little paranoid because I hadn't come up in the same way. Where I always thought, like the people in New York who were leaving the city to do regional theater, they were the real actors. Where I just wanted to be in Manhattan and close to the theaters. That to me was being an actress. I'm walking by the actor's studio where Marilyn Monroe walked. So it's kind of like a fantastical, immature, juvenile approach to life and acting. So yeah, I always had that intimidation. Like I wasn't quite up to it with these people because they would give their eye teeth to get that role, and it's their whole life. It wasn't my whole life. It was a piece of my life, a piece that I loved and that I enjoyed doing, and it will always be a piece of my life. But when you're with people who have, great careers, but the thing is, once you start playing, once you start rehearsing, it's like driving up with your Datsun next to the Jaguar. We're all in the same parking lot. We're all just doing, it's like life. So once I get past that, it's all psychological. But it's nice, it can work both ways. You can also get people who are insecure can go for the jugular with something like that. And if somebody needs to feel, that there is a hierarchy here, that could be tough because I would probably buy into it for a little while. Then I probably have a little moxie in there somewhere, but I appreciated that from her, and all of them really, everybody would at some point, and except one time it was funny, Peter Boyle, because I was used to like a much more mushy theater thing, and Chris Elliott, Chris and Fred, they had that similar energy, and Chris would come off stage and be like, oh, it was terrible. I'm like, what are you, crazy? It was great. No, it stunk. That I'm used to. I'm not used to these confident people. Patty Heaton, she can be eating chips up until action and then just like whip out a great scene. The first scene that I did with her, I had to be serving cookies, and she's like, oh, God, Sam last night, I thought he was going to wet the bed. I almost had a heart attack. And then action. I'd be like, oh, Deb, great cookies, But I couldn't work that way. And something about, but like Doris was, it wasn't, that was like an anomaly kind of, because everybody was pretty much doing their own work, and then they'd go off into their dressing room, and they had big careers they're managing, you know? They'd be on the phone with their, you know, Conan spot or something, and this was not me. So it was a different way of working. And rehearsal time, like, just, okay, let's get to the rehearsal, through the rehearsal so we can go and take care of our stuff, you know? So that took an adjustment for me to get used to it. I kind of translated it sometimes as, oh my God, they're so good, they can do that. You know what? It's not better, it's not worse, it's a different way of working, and that I learned over time. And I prefer to not do it that way. I prefer to really, and Brad likes to rehearse. Brad will go over scenes and really work them out like you're doing a play, and I enjoy that.
Go back to Doris for a moment. Talk about the relationship between her character Marie and Amy.
It's funny because it started out so in love, and she used her love for Amy to get at Deborah, which, again, this is all like typical stuff. I mean, I can think of girlfriend situations where this happens, or, you know, you watch the kids and these dynamics play out. But that's pretty much the Amy thing. And then, but they used very early on that Amy periodically would be knocked off the pedestal, and you know, these flaws would be revealed, and Marie would get to lord over it. But it's just like, it's taught me a lot about my family. Everything seems like such a big deal for 5 minutes, but then it blows over, and we're all back to where we were again until the next thing happens when we can't be in the same room for 5 minutes, and then that blows over. It just goes on and on.
Let's talk about Brad Garrett. What's he like to work with?
Brad is really interesting because it's about 5 different people you work with. There's like it's a different. Like I said, when we're rehearsing, I enjoy it more than anything, just like working on the scenes. He's very connected. But before you get to the rehearsal, you know, he's hilarious. He's a hilarious stand-up. He's a hilarious mimic. And he is so quick, and he's so funny. You can spend, you know, a large portion of the time just like, you know, laughing at his shtick and his jokes and stuff. And it's funny because in the beginning, when I didn't have experience with it, I would sometimes have to, like, you know, keep thinking. But after time, it kind of almost calmed me down. It becomes part of your work, you know? And if I'd come in anxious about a big scene or something, and then he'd start with his shtick and ripping everybody on the set and doing his thing, it kind of calmed me down. Like, that became the warm-up. But I think he's hilarious. And early on, I felt so lucky because, you know, you get hooked up with people creatively at different times in your life. Like, I mean, obviously with Phil, you know, we met each other through theater and through a creative endeavor, and it completely changed our lives. So not only, you know, of course, personally, but also as an actor. I mean, being able to work with him is like, I always say, it's like having a master class at the actor studio. So I never really went to the actor studio, and I wasn't one of those sit in the back in black and, you know, agonize over my art. But I got to work with Phil Rosenthal, so that's unbelievable as an actress to have that experience. I got to work with Judy Toll, who was such an incredible, and changed me as an actress and as a creative person. And then Brad Garrett also is like my third one, because I learned a lot from about myself as an actress. About there were times early on with the characters getting married. Even he wasn't happy about that, and that was so challenging for me because I'm so about like the personal interaction and that was not there. He was really not sure that this was the way the show should go. So for someone like me, who needs to be intensely loved by everyone, who takes everything extremely personally, because it can't really be about acting, because that's a minor thing, everything else is more important, that was a challenge for me to work through, and I was able to do it. And so he changed me as a performer. And then the great side is, I think we're hilarious together. I think I'm funnier with him, just like I felt funny with Judy. I feel really funny with him. Sometimes I feel him stand next to him. It's just funny.
Okay,
Stop.
let's stop.
Okay, did it?